My name is Ruby, and I am 60 years old. 2 years into retirement, my greatest joys are the perennial beds in my backyard garden and the predictable, sweet chaos of Saturday afternoons with my grandson. Leo is 4.5, all scraped knees and endless questions, and his laughter is the best sound I know. My son David and his wife Chelsea live a comfortable 15-minute drive away in a beautiful modern home in a neighborhood with mature oaks and sidewalks perfect for tricycle races. I considered myself blessed, close enough to be part of the daily fabric of my grandson's life, to witness his milestones, to be a soft place for him to land. I had a key to their house, a standing invitation for coffee, and what I believed was an unspoken understanding we were family. But I have learned that sometimes the most beautiful picture frames are the ones that hide the cracks in the wall. The warmth I felt was real, but it was contingent on my willingness to stay within lines I didn't even know were being drawn. The story I'm about to tell you isn't about a single dramatic blow-up. It's about the slow, insidious erosion of a mother's place and the quiet earthquake that happens when she finally decides to stand on solid ground of her own making. Before I begin, I wonder where you are right now. Are you in your kitchen with a cup of tea, or maybe in your car between errands? Wherever you've found a moment for this story, thank you for being here. If a tale about family respect and the courage to rewrite your own rules speaks to you, I invite you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This journey from hope to heartbreak to healing is one I think many of us know but seldom give voice to. Your support lets me know these conversations are important. The rhythm of my weeks was built around Leo. Tuesdays and Thursdays were for preschool pickup and afternoons at the playground. But Saturdays were sacred. David would often be catching up on work emails, and Chelsea would be at her spin class or brunch with friends, so Leo and I had the house to ourselves. We would bake simple cookies, the kind with sprinkles, or build elaborate forts in the living room with every blanket and pillow we could find. I'd let him help me water the potted plants on the patio, which usually meant more water for the deck than the pots, and we'd both end up laughing. I thought Chelsea appreciated this. She'd often say, "It's such a help, Ruby, really," as she breezed out the door in her expensive workout gear. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. So when the first comments came, I dismissed them as my own sensitivity. It started after one of our baking sessions. Chelsea came home to a kitchen dusted with flour and a happy chocolate-smeared Leo. Her nose wrinkled almost imperceptibly. "Oh, you used the white flour. And that chocolate has dairy. We're trying to limit his inflammatory foods." She said it lightly while unloading her designer gym bag. "Maybe next time, almond flour and carob chips. I'll leave some out for you." I felt a pang of foolishness, as if I'd given him poison. "Of course," I said, wiping the counter with a new urgency I didn't realize. "No worries," she sang, already walking away. "Just for next time." That next time became a pattern. A gentle correction about the sunscreen brand I used, not clean enough. A note that the children's show we watched was too stimulating a suggestion that the wooden blocks were a better choice than the plastic trucks I'd brought over. Each comment was delivered with a veneer of helpfulness, a "we're all on the same team" smile. But the subtext was clear. My instincts, my way of loving, were outdated and slightly wrong. David, when I mentioned it in passing, would wave a hand. "She just reads a lot of those parenting blogs, Mom. Don't take it personally. She wants the best for Leo." So I tried not to. I started a notes app on my phone with Chelsea's preferences, snack brands, approved toys, the pediatrician-approved method for treating a minor scrape. I became a student of my own grandson's life, determined to pass the invisible tests. My efforts, instead of earning grace, seemed to expand the list of expectations. One Tuesday, as I was leaving, Chelsea said, "You know, since you're already here picking him up, would you mind just throwing in a load of his laundry? The organic detergent is under the sink." It wasn't a question, it was a presumption. And I, wanting to be needed, wanting to be useful, said yes. That yes became a door held wide open. Soon, there was always a little thing. Could I swing by the dry cleaner? The package on the porch needed to be brought in. The dog needed a quick walk. My visits, which had been about connection, became punctuated by chores. The sweet, unstructured time with Leo was now framed by a list of tasks to complete before Chelsea returned home. The real turning point, the moment the foundation truly shifted, happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was looking for a spare set of twin sheets for the guest room Chelsea had mentioned a friend might visit when I opened the hall closet. Behind a stack of board games and old photo albums, my fingers brushed against familiar velvet. My breath caught. It was the box for my father-in-law's antique railroad pocket watch, a beautiful heavy thing with a worn engraving of his initials. My husband Ben had cherished it. When David turned 30, I'd given it to him, telling him stories of the grandfather he'd barely known. The box was light, too light. I opened it, empty. A cold trickle of dread ran down my spine. I moved things frantically, my heart pounding. Further back, wrapped in a soft cloth, should have been the petite sterling silver tea set Ben and I received as a wedding gift. It was modest but elegant, and we'd used it for every anniversary breakfast. That cloth bundle was also gone. I found Chelsea in the home office scrolling through a website of minimalist home decor. "Chelsea," I said, my voice unsteady. I was in the hall closet, Grandpa's pocket watch and the little silver set from Ben. I can't seem to find them. She didn't look away from her screen. "Oh, those. Yes, I can sign them. They were just taking up space, collecting dust. That vintage aesthetic isn't really our style anymore. We got an amazing offer for the watch, actually. It's going straight into Leo's 529 college fund." The room seemed to tilt. "You sold them?" Without saying anything. Finally, she swiveled her chair, her expression a mix of patience and mild exasperation, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Ruby, this is our home. We're in a constant edit mode. Clutter is stress." And David agreed it was fine. They were just things. Isn't it better to turn old things into a future for Leo? When David came home that evening, I pulled him into the kitchen. "Your grandfather's watch. The silver. Chelsea sold them." The hurt was raw in my voice. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He busied himself filling a glass with water from the refrigerator door. "Mom, come on. Don't start a thing. Chelsea's just optimizing. She's got a knack for it. And if it helps for Leo, what's the harm?" They were sitting in a closet. It's not like we used them. "They were memories, David." I whispered the ache so deep it was physical. "They were your history." "They were old stuff," he said, his tone final dismissive. He took a long drink, a clear signal the conversation was over. In that moment, I didn't just feel the loss of heirlooms. I felt the loss of the son I thought I knew, the one who valued story and sentiment. He had chosen a cold, transactional logic over a shared past. It was the first real betrayal, and it left a silence in its wake that was louder than any argument. After the incident with the heirlooms, the air in their home changed for me. It was no longer a place of warmth, but a carefully curated stage where I was increasingly an awkward stagehand. Chelsea's corrections became less gentle, more public. During a backyard barbecue with another couple from David's firm, she laughed loudly and said, "Ruby tried to give Leo grape juice last week. Can you imagine? The sugar, I had to swap it for coconut water right under his nose." The other wife giggled uncomfortably. My face burned. David, standing at this grill, just chuckled and flipped a burger. His silence was a complicity that stung more than Chelsea's words. My role was being systematically reduced. I was no longer consulted on anything related to Leo. I found out he'd had an ear infection from a passing comment a week later. I learned he was starting a new early childhood soccer development program on Saturdays, our Saturdays, when I saw the tiny cleats by the door. "Oh, didn't David tell you?" Chelsea had asked, feigning surprise. Such a fantastic opportunity. Very exclusive. The Wednesday ladies' lunch was the watershed. I arrived with groceries as the typed schedule on the fridge dictated to the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. 4 of Chelsea's friends were arranged artfully on the patio remnants of a beautiful, catered-looking lunch spread across the outdoor table, empty seafood salad bowls, bread baskets with crumbs, wine bottles standing like sentinels. Chelsea met me at the kitchen door, her smile bright and utterly false. "Ruby, you're a lifesaver. We got carried away catching up." "The kitchen is a bit of a disaster zone." She gestured behind her. The state-of-the-art kitchen looked like it had been ransacked. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink and on every counter. "The girls and I are going to take a dip in the pool. You don't mind, do you?" Before I could form a word, she was gliding away, calling over her shoulder. "The eco-friendly dishwasher pods are under the sink, and hand wash the crystal, please." I stood there, a bag of organic kale in my hand, feeling a century old. I put the groceries away slowly, then rolled up my sleeves. As I filled the farmhouse sink with steaming water, the laughter from the pool area was a sharp counterpoint to the quiet clatter of plates. Then I saw David's car. He was home early. He came in through the garage, his tie loosened. He walked into the kitchen, briefcase in hand, and stopped. He took in the scene, Me, elbows deep in soapy water, surrounded by the glamorous debris of his wife's social life, my back to him. I saw his reflection in the dark glass of the oven door. He watched me for a long 3 seconds. I saw the conflict on his face, a flicker of shame, a twist of discomfort. Then his reflection turned and vanished, his footsteps quiet on the stairs, retreating. That moment severed something vital. It wasn't just Chelsea using me. It was David seeing it, acknowledging it with his presence and choosing to walk away. He was ashamed not of her but of me, of my position on my knees, scrubbing his wife's friends' plates. In his eyes, at that moment, I was not his mother. I was the help, and he didn't want to have to look at it. The drive home was a blur of silent, hot tears. The grief wasn't just for the lost afternoon, it was for the lost son. My friend Martha, who has the emotional perception of a seismograph, called me that evening. "You sound hollow," she said bluntly. "What did they do now?" Over the phone, the whole sad story tumbled out. The heirlooms, the soccer Saturdays, the sink full of crystal. Martha listened, and I could hear her tapping a pen angrily against her desk. "Ruby," she said, her voice firm, "you are being emotionally erased. They are treating you like an appliance, a convenient, self-propelling grandma bot that also does dishes. You have to say something." "But Martha, if I make waves, I might not see Leo at all." I cried, voicing my deepest fear. "You are already not seeing Leo," she countered gently. "You are seeing a child through a pane of bulletproof glass dictated by Chelsea, and David is letting it happen. You need to talk to him, not her. Him. He's your son. Remind him of that." Her words were a lifeline, but the thought of confronting David paralyzed me. So, instead, I decided to speak in the only language I thought he might still understand, the written word. A letter. A heartfelt, non-confrontational plea from a mother to her son. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in subtle degradation. The typed schedule evolved. In Chelsea's flawless cursive, a new heading appeared: Home Management Tasks. Underneath were items that crossed a line from helping out to domestic servitude. Organize pantry by expiration date and photograph contents for inventory. Wash interior windows on first floor. Detail clean interior of refrigerator. Deep clean master bathroom, including grout and shower glass. The master bathroom. That felt like a final, deliberate invasion. It was their private sanctuary, a space with his razor and her serums, their shared towels. Cleaning it wasn't about helping. It was about establishing dominance, about erasing any last pretense of personal boundary. I looked at the list, my stomach churning, and knew I could not do it. But I also knew a direct confrontation with Chelsea would be a war I'd lose with David as her unwilling conscript. So I took Martha's advice. I would appeal to David. Not in a quick phone call where he could brush me off, but in a way that required him to sit with my words. I spent 3 evenings at my dining table, the one Ben and I had found at a flea market decades ago. I wrote a letter. I wrote about memories of him as a boy helping me in my own garden. I wrote about the profound joy Leo brought me, the light in my life since his father had passed. I described without accusation the loneliness that had crept in, the feeling of being a ghost in their bustling lives. I mentioned the watch not to blame, but to express the sorrow of losing that tangible link to his father and grandfather. I described the profound hurt of the kitchen moment of seeing his reflection walk away. "I miss my son," I wrote. "I feel like I'm losing you in pieces. Can we find a way back to each other? Can we just talk? I love you always." It was the most nakedly vulnerable thing I had ever done. I sealed it in a plain white envelope, my hands trembling. That Saturday, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Chelsea was taking Leo to a birthday party across town. David was lacing up his running shoes in the marble foyer, clearly eager to escape the house. It was now or never. "David," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I held out the envelope. "I need you to read this, please, when you have a quiet moment." He looked at the envelope as if it were a live snake. Irritation flashed across his face, quickly masked by a weary sigh. "Mom, what is this? I've got a long run planned, then I've got to—" "Please," I interrupted the plea, cracking my voice. I pressed the envelope into his hand. "Just read it later." He shoved it into the small pocket of his running shorts, the paper crinkling in protest. "Fine. Okay. Later." He didn't meet my eyes, already turning toward the door. For the next 48 hours, I lived in a state of suspended animation. Every creak of my house, every ring of the phone sent a jolt through me. I replayed every sentence, hoping one would pierce the armor he seemed to have built around himself. The silence was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. On Monday morning, the call came. It was Chelsea. Her voice was like polished steel, cold and smooth. "Ruby, we need to see you, today. Can you be here at 4 o'clock?" My heart hammered against my ribs so violently I felt dizzy. This was it. He'd read the letter. He was going to talk to me. Maybe, just maybe, the boy I raised was still in there. A fragile, foolish hope bloomed in my chest, a tiny, defiant flower in a landscape of dread. "Of course," I said, my voice thin. "I'll be there." The silence at their house at 4 o'clock was profound. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a courtroom before a verdict. No music, no cartoon cacophony, not even the hum of the refrigerator. Chelsea answered the door almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting behind it. She was dressed in expensive-looking yoga pants and a tight tank top, her face a mask of composed neutrality. "Come in," she said, stepping back without a smile. David stood at the far end of the living room, his back to me, staring out the large window at the perfectly manicured backyard. His posture was rigid, hands shoved deep in his pockets. The air was so thick with tension I could barely breathe. "Sit," Chelsea instructed, gesturing to the low, modern armchair that was always slightly uncomfortable. She positioned herself on the edge of the large, sectional sofa, a queen holding court. I perched on the edge of the chair, my knees weak. Chelsea began. She didn't waste a second. "We read your letter, Ruby." She let the statement hang, her eyes boring into mine. "And to be perfectly candid, we found it emotionally manipulative in the extreme." The words were a physical slap. I flinched. All this talk of loneliness, of losing a son, it's classic guilt-tripping rhetoric. She continued, her tone analytical, as if diagnosing a condition. "You are attempting to drive a wedge between David and me because you cannot accept that his primary loyalty, his family unit, is here now. With me and Leo." I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I looked desperately at David's back. It didn't move. "Your persistent refusal to respect our boundaries, our parenting choices, the way we run our household. It's become toxic," she stated, her voice chillingly calm. "You prioritize your own emotional needs over the health of our marriage and the stable environment we are building for our son. That is not support. That is sabotage." Then David spoke. He still didn't turn. His voice was low, gravelly, strained from some internal pressure, but horrifyingly clear. "Mom, Chelsea and we've talked about this a lot." He took a shaky breath. "This situation, the way things are, it's just not sustainable. It's not working for us." He finally turned. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot and fixed on a point just over my left shoulder. He looked like a man reading a hostage statement under duress. "So, you have two options." He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Option 1, you fully commit to supporting our family. That means following Chelsea's lead without question or complaint. You respect her authority in this house as my wife and as Leo's mother. You become a real harmonious part of this household on our terms." He paused, the silence screaming. My blood seemed to freeze in my veins. "Option 2, he continued, his voice dropping even lower, forcing me to lean forward to hear the annihilation. "If you can't do that, if you can't fully get on board, then it's probably better for everyone if you just stop coming over. Two options, obey or leave." Time didn't just stop, it shattered. The beautifully decorated room, the plush rug, the abstract art on the walls, it all dissolved into meaningless shapes. All that existed was my son's mouth forming those clean, clinical, monstrous words. He had reduced a lifetime of love sacrifice and shared history to a binary corporate ultimatum. I was being given a performance review, and my continued access to my own flesh and blood was the conditional bonus. A wave of nausea rose, followed by a surge of such profound, icy clarity. It was like stepping into a silent, still winter morning after a storm. The confusion, the desperate hope, the years of bending it all evaporated. In its place was a perfect, calm understanding. I saw them with absolute detachment, a terrified man clinging to the script his wife had written, and the woman who held the pen satisfied with her handiwork. A small, sad smile touched my lips. It held no joy. It was the smile of a puzzle finally solved, of a mystery that was tragically simple. It was the smile of goodbye. I stood up. My movements were smooth, steady, as if I were moving through deep water. My voice, when it came, was quieter than a whisper, yet it filled the silent room. I understand everything now. There is no choice for me here, and I don't need one. I walked past them, my footsteps silent on the rug. I entered the spotless, cold kitchen. From the hook by the mudroom door, I took my own canvas tote bag, the one that always held a spare change of clothes for Leo, a box of crayons, a storybook. I opened the junk drawer next to the sink, the one that held spare batteries and takeout menus. My fingers found the cool, familiar teeth of the key. I pulled out my single key to their house, the one I'd carried for 5 years, a symbol of trust and belonging. I placed it on the cold, hard surface of the granite countertop. It landed with a small, final click that echoed in the silence. I did not look at David. I did not glance at Chelsea. I walked back through the living room, a woman walking out of a museum exhibit of a life that was no longer hers. I opened the heavy front door, stepped through, and pulled it shut behind me. The latch engaged with a soft, precise, and utterly final snick. The first days were a raw, primal landscape of grief. I didn't just cry, I howled into the pillows of my too-quiet bed. I raged at the walls of the home I'd shared with Ben, screaming at his photograph for leaving me to face this alone. The pain was a physical entity, a weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I was convinced in my darkest moments that I was a terrible mother, a failure so complete that my only child would exile me. I didn't eat. I barely slept. My garden, my refuge, withered under my neglect, mirroring my state. Martha saved me. She didn't ask for details. She just showed up with a casserole she knew I wouldn't eat, but the gesture mattered. She made pots of strong tea and sat with me in silence, a solid, steady presence in the hurricane of my emotions. After 3 days of this, she took my face in her hands, her librarian's eyes fierce behind her glasses. "Ruby, listen to me. You did not abandon them. You were issued an eviction notice from your own son's heart. There is a monumental difference. And you, my friend, you walked out with your head held high. You left the key. Never, ever forget the power in that simple act." Her words were a lifeline. Slowly guided by her stubborn friendship, I began to move. The movement was mechanical at first. I took a shower. I washed the sheets. I made myself a piece of toast. Martha, with the subtle force of a tidal wave, signed me up for a mindful watercolor for beginners class at the local community center. "You need to make a new mess," she said, "one that's yours." The first class was terrifying. My hands shook holding the brush, but the feel of the paint on the thick paper, the way the colors bled into each other without my permission, was somehow cathartic. I painted a chaotic, muddy blue and gray mess. The instructor called it evocative. I called it a start. Meanwhile, in the pristine world I'd left behind, the first consequences began to ripple. The call came on Tuesday, just over a week after my departure. David's voice was sharp, laced with an anger that felt performative, covering a panic he couldn't name. "Mom, where are you?" Chelsea had a critical planning session with the florist for the Henderson wedding. "It's her biggest client, and you were supposed to be here at 2 for Leo. He's waiting." I was in my garden, kneeling in the dirt, finally pulling weeds. The soil under my nails felt like a reclaiming. I took a slow, deep breath, the phone pressed to my ear. "David," I said, my voice calm and utterly foreign to my own ears. "I no longer have a key to your house, and I am not on Chelsea's schedule. You'll have to find another solution." The silence on the other end was profound, then splintered by a frustrated exhale. "You're really going to be like this? Over a misunderstanding. This is petty, Mom." "It's not petty," I said quietly. "It's reality. You'll have to manage your own reality now." I ended the call. Chelsea had to cancel her meeting. The fallout I heard through the delicate grapevine of suburban acquaintances was significant. The florist was annoyed. Chelsea was reportedly livid, telling her circle I had pulled a passive-aggressive stunt and was unstable. By Friday, the cracks were becoming visible. Chelsea, for whom cooking was a performative art for Instagram rather than a daily necessity, had no framework for feeding a family. Takeout containers piled up in the recycling bin. Leo, accustomed to regular meals and homemade snacks, was existing on a haphazard diet of pizza bites and fruit pouches. The house, which demanded constant, meticulous upkeep to maintain its magazine-ready state, began to show signs of entropy, a pile of mail. Here toys left out there, a faint layer of dust on the console table. David called again. His tone shifted from anger to a wheedling exhaustion. "Mom, look, I'm sorry about how things went down. It's been A lot here. Chelsea's overwhelmed. Could you maybe just come by tomorrow? Just for a few hours, just to help us get back to level. I was looking at my second watercolor attempt, a lopsided but recognizably joyful sunflower. I'm sorry, David. I said, my voice even. I have plans tomorrow. And I did. Martha was taking me to a farmer's market in the next town over just to wander. The frustrated, almost helpless sigh he emitted was its own form of music. I was no longer a variable they could control. I was an independent clause, and I had just placed a period. The dominoes did not just fall, they toppled in a satisfying, if tragic, cascade. David's work, once his primary focus and escape, began to suffer. He started taking sporadic afternoons off when the expensive, on-demand house cleaner, a woman named Elena, who Chelsea had already cycled through 3 times for being insufficiently detail-oriented, canceled last minute. He missed a client call because he was home with a feverish Leo. Chelsea had a can't-miss lunch with a potential sponsor for her fledgling lifestyle blog. His boss, a no-nonsense woman named Susan, called him into her office for a closed-door conversation about focus and professional reliability. The financial facade crumbled next. The constant drain of gourmet takeout, the premium fees for last-minute babysitters found on a questionable app, the inflated rate they had to pay Elena to tolerate Chelsea's nitpicking, it bled their comfortable dual income dry. Arguments about money became their new soundtrack. I heard the sharp, clipped tones through the phone once when David thought I'd hung up. You spent how much on those chairs we're eating frozen lasagna, Chelsea? Her retort was icy about investing in their brand. The most heartbreaking casualty was Leo. The sensitive, routine-loving little boy was unmoored. Without the consistent patient and unstructured love I provided, the silly songs, the endless patience for snail-watching, the predictable comfort of my presence, he became anxious. He had nightmares. He started throwing tantrums at drop-off, something his preschool teacher noted with concern. He asked for Grandma Ruby constantly, a refrain that became a trigger for more tension. Chelsea, whose vision of motherhood involved photogenic moments and curated activities, was ill-equipped for the gritty emotional labor of solo parenting a confused child. Her frustration turned to resentment, which she directed at David. He's your son too. Do something. This is because your mother spoiled him. While their world constricted into a stressful, messy knot, mine was slowly, tenderly expanding. The watercolor class led to coffee with 2 other women in the class. Grace, a recently retired nurse, and Lynn, a ceramicist. We talked about art, but also about lost change and starting over. I started volunteering 1 morning a week at the city's community garden project. My decades of backyard experience were actually valued. People asked me about soil pH and companion planting. They called me Ruby. They thanked me. I felt a sense of competency and community I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. 1 month to the day after I walked out, David appeared on my doorstep. He looked wrecked. Shadows like bruises under his eyes, his shirt untucked and wrinkled. He'd lost weight. Mom, he croaked. Can I come in? We sat in my living room, now bright with my terrible, proud watercolors pinned to the wall and thriving plants on every surface. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he broke. He cried like he hadn't since he was a little boy. Great, heaving sobs that shook his whole frame. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I was weak. I just wanted peace, and I thought letting her have her way was the price. I let her convince me you were the problem, that you were trying to control us. He spilled at all the silent treatments he got if he defended me the way she framed every one of my actions as an attack, the constant pressure to prioritize our nuclear family. He told me Chelsea was now talking to a lawyer just to explore options, saying he was an incompetent partner and that this chaos was a direct result of his enmeshment with me. The irony was so bitter it was almost funny. I let him cry. I let him empty the poisoned well. I felt a deep maternal ache for his pain, but it was now separate from my own. My heart was no longer his to break. When he was spent hiccuping and drained, I spoke. David, I forgive you. He looked up, a desperate hope flaring in his red-rimmed eyes. I continued gently but firmly. I forgive you because I love you and because carrying that anger would only hurt me. But I said, and I saw the hope dim things can never go back to how they were. I will never be a member of your household staff again. I will be Leo's grandmother and I will be your mother, but it will be on a new foundation. One built on mutual respect, not on what I can do for you. You and Chelsea have to untangle the mess you made. I have my own life to live now. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever uttered. It was also the most necessary. Today, the sun has a different quality. It feels earned. It warms my skin as I sit on the bench in my garden, my hands resting in my lap, the earthy scent of damp soil and blooming lavender surrounding me. My dahlias are a bold, triumphant riot of crimson and gold against the green. There is a scar on my heart, yes, a permanent tender place where a mother's deepest wound knitted itself back together, but it doesn't ache anymore. It hums, a low, steady vibration of hard-won peace. It is my reminder. It reminds me that love has many languages, and one of the most difficult to speak is the language of goodbye. It reminds me that sometimes the most loving act is not to cushion someone from the consequences of their choices, but to let the full weight of those consequences land. I learned that family is not a cage where you surrender yourself to keep the peace. It is a garden. And in a garden, every plant needs its own space, its own light, its own roots. You can't thrive in someone else's shadow. My relationship with David is a careful, ongoing reconstruction. We have dinner, just the two of us, once a month. We talk about his work, my garden, his childhood memories that don't involve Chelsea. It's stilted at times, but it's honest. He is learning the hard way what it means to be a partner and a father without a scapegoat. I see Leo every other Saturday. We have a new routine. He comes to my house. We dig in my garden, getting gloriously dirty. We paint pictures with my cheap watercolors, and they are abstract masterpieces of joy. We bake cookies with white flour and chocolate chips, and I let him lick the spoon. Chelsea tolerates this arrangement with a frosty civility. The power dynamic has irrevocably shifted. She knows I am not a resource to be managed. I am a person with boundaries, and my time with my grandson is a gift I choose to give, not an obligation I am forced to fulfill. So I leave you with this question from my garden to wherever you are. Have you ever found yourself in a room where staying meant slowly disappearing, where the air was thin and the rules were not your own? And did you ever discover that the bravest thing, the most terrifying and liberating act, was not to shout, not to fight, but to simply walk away, to pick up the pieces of your spirit smile through the devastating quiet and trust that your absence would be a louder teacher than your pleading presence ever was? If this story of a woman finding her footing on the other side of heartbreak resonates with you, I would be so grateful if you'd share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary that felt like amputating a part of your own heart? How did you find your way through? Your stories connect us. If this video touched you, please give it a thumbs up. It lets the algorithm know these quiet stories of resilience matter. And if you want to join this community for more conversations about reclaiming your life, finding your voice, and the unexpected freedom that comes with honoring yourself, please hit that subscribe button and share this with a friend, a sister, a mother who might need to hear this message today. Thank you truly for your time, for your ears, for your heart. Remember, no matter how deep the winter spring always finds a way, and so can you.